I carried bricks under to build a home for my family, believing it would unite us, but on my birthday I sat alone in that same house without anyone by my side. I'm writing this at 2:47 a.m. on what should have been the happiest day of my 35th birthday. The house is dead silent except for the hum of the refrigerator I bought for us. The birthday cake Sarah made sits untouched on the counter, candles long since blown out by the wind from the open door she walked through for the last time. Let me tell how a man destroys everything he's ever worked for in the span of 6 months. It started innocently enough. That's what I keep telling anyway. Madison was the new project coordinator at the construction firm where I'd been breaking my back for 8 years. 26 years old, fresh out of college, with this energy that made everyone around her feel more alive. While I was coming home covered in dust and cement, complaining about my aching joints, she was planning team dinners and organizing office parties. Sarah noticed the change in me before I did. Lighter lately, she said one evening while folding our daughter Emma's school uniforms. Less stressed about work. I should have heard the question in her voice. Should have recognized that my wife of 12 years knew me better than I knew. Instead I just smiled and said work was getting better. The first lie came so easily. Madison started staying late to review blueprints. So did I. We'd order takeout and spread plans across the conference table, talking about load, bearing walls and foundation specs. But somewhere between discussing rebar placement and debating concrete mixtures, we started talking about other things. Her dreams of opening her own firm someday. My regrets about never finishing my engineering degree. Her so much smarter than give credit for, David. She said one Thursday night, her hand briefly touching mine as she reached for the salt packets. Sarah's lucky to have someone who works so hard for his family. The compliment hit different than Sarah's tired thank. When I handed over my paycheck, Madison saw potential in me. Sarah just saw the same guy who forgot to pick milk and left his work boots in the hallway. That's when the justification started creeping in. Sarah and I had been in survival mode for so long. Between Emma's school expenses, the mortgage on the house I was still paying for brick by literal brick, and my aging parents' medical bills, romance felt like a luxury we couldn't afford. We passed each other like ships in the night. Her working double shifts at the hospital, me putting in overtime whenever possible. When was the last time Sarah looked at me the way Madison did? When was the last time anyone made me feel like I was more than just a paycheck and a pair of strong hands? The night everything changed was a Friday in March. Madison's car wouldn't start after another late planning session. I offered to drive her home. Want to grab a drink first? She asked as we pulled out of the parking lot. I know this quaint place. I should have said no. Should have thought about Emma asleep in her bed, waiting for Saturday morning pancakes. Should have thought about Sarah, probably already asleep with medical textbooks scattered around her, still trying to finish her nursing degree after years of putting it on hold for our family. Instead, I thought about how Madison laughed at my jokes. How she made me feel like the man I used to be before responsibility wore me down to nothing. Just one drink, I said. 3 hours later I was sitting in my driveway at 1:30 a.m., staring at the house I'd spent 5 years building from the ground. Every brick laid with dreams of family barbecues and birthday parties. Every window frame installed while imagining Sarah reading bedtime stories to our kids. Every door hung with hopes of a future that suddenly felt suffocating. Madison's perfume still lingered on my work shirt. Her phone number was now in my phone under Project Cord, like some pathetic code name. I hadn't crossed any physical lines that night. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in my marriage, I was excited about seeing someone who wasn't my wife. Sarah was asleep when I finally made it inside. I stood in our bedroom doorway, watching her breathe peacefully, completely unaware that her husband had just taken the first step toward destroying everything we'd built together. The next morning, Emma bounced into the kitchen wearing her soccer uniform, chattering about her game that afternoon. Sarah my cheek while pouring coffee, asking if I could pick Emma's birthday present on my way home from work. Her party's only 2 weeks away, Sarah reminded me. She's so excited about turning 8. I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the devoted father and husband, while my phone buzzed with a text from Madison thanking me for the ride and the great conversation. That's when I realized the most dangerous part wasn't the attraction. It was how easy it felt to live in both worlds. To be David the family man in the morning and David the interesting guy Madison saw in the evening. For 3 weeks I convinced I was just being friendly. We were just talking. Just enjoying each other's company. Just two people who understood each other's professional struggles. But late night texts started feeling like secrets. Working lunches became something I looked forward to more than coming home. When Madison complimented my new shirt I felt more validated than when Sarah told me she loved me. The worst part. I started resenting Sarah for not being Madison. For being tired after 12-hour shifts instead of bubbly and energetic. For talking about grocery budgets instead of career dreams. For needing help with Emma's homework instead of wanting to discuss architecture and design. How twisted is that? I was angry at my wife for being exactly the partner and mother I'd fallen in love with. Just because another woman made me remember what it felt like to be wanted instead of needed. Emma's birthday party was scheduled for April 15th. Sarah had been planning it for weeks, making decorations by hand to save money, coordinating with other parents, preparing Emma's favorite foods. The house I'd built was finally going to be filled with the laughter and joy I'd imagined when I was laying each brick. But April 15th was also the day Madison and I were supposed to present our latest project to the city planning committee. A huge opportunity for both of us. Can't reschedule? Sarah asked when I told her about the conflict. Emma's been talking about this party for months. This presentation could change everything for us. I said and I meant it. The promotion, the raise, the chance to move into management. Everything our family needed. What I didn't say was that I'd volunteered for the April 15th slot. What I didn't say was that Madison had suggested we celebrate afterward if the presentation went well. What I didn't say was that I was choosing her over them, and I was too much of a coward to admit it even to. Sarah's face fell, but she nodded. Okay, I understand, work comes first sometimes. But her eyes said something different. Her eyes said she was starting to understand that something had shifted, and she couldn't figure out what. The presentation went perfectly. Madison and I made a great team, finishing each other's sentences, building on each other's ideas. The committee approved our proposal unanimously. We were both going to get the recognition we deserved. We should definitely celebrate, Madison said as we packed our materials. I know exactly the place. I checked my phone. The party would be winding down by now. Emma would have opened her presents, blown out her candles, laughed with her friends in the house I'd built for moments exactly like this. Let's do it, I said. That night, in a hotel room I paid for with money Sarah thought was going toward Emma's college fund, I crossed every line I'd spent months convincing I'd never cross. But the betrayal had started long before that night. It started the moment I decided Madison's validation was worth more than Sarah's trust. The moment I chose feeling desired over being dependable. The moment I decided I deserved something my family couldn't give me. I came home at 3 a.m. to find Sarah sitting at our kitchen table, still wearing her party cleanup clothes, surrounded by Emma's birthday wrapping paper and deflated balloons. How did the presentation go? She asked without looking. Really well. Got the promotion, that's wonderful. Her voice was flat empty. Emma asked where we're during present time. I told her Daddy was working hard for our family. The cake she'd made for Emma sat on the counter, chocolate with pink frosting, decorated with little soccer balls because that's what our daughter loved most in the world. Next to it was a smaller cake with Happy Birthday David, written in careful cursive. She'd made me a birthday cake too. Even though I'd missed our daughter's party, even though I'd chosen work over the two most important people in my, even though I just destroyed everything we'd built together. I saved some cake, Sarah said quietly. Emma wanted to make sure got a piece. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw what I'd been too selfish to notice. The exhaustion wasn't just from work. The distance wasn't just from stress. She'd been watching me pull away for months, and she'd been trying to hold our family together while I was falling apart. Sarah finally looked at me and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment. David, she said softly, need to know that whatever's happening, whatever's changing Emma and I love. But we can't keep building it with someone who isn't really here. I wanted to confess everything right then. Wanted to fall to my knees and beg forgiveness and promise to never see Madison again. Wanted to prove that I could still be the man she married, the father Emma deserved. Instead I mumbled something about being tired and went to bed, leaving her alone with the wreckage of our daughter's party, and the growing certainty that her husband was becoming a stranger. 3 days later, Madison texted me a photo of her lease agreement. She was moving to a new apartment downtown. Did I want to help her look at furniture this weekend? I stared at that text for 20 minutes, Sarah's voice echoing in my head. We can't keep building it with someone who isn't really here. Then I typed back, sounds great. What time? The foundation I'd spent 8 years building was already cracking, and I was too busy planning my next betrayal to notice the walls starting to crumble. The lie detector test came back positive. Not a real one. Just the way Emma looked at me when I walked through the door at midnight for the 4th time that week. 8 years old, and she already knew something was wrong with Daddy. We're working late again, she asked, standing at the top of the stairs in her unicorn pajamas, clutching the stuffed elephant I'd won her at the county fair 2 summers ago. Yes, sweetheart. Big project, another lie. I'd spent the evening at Madison's new apartment, assembling IKEA furniture and pretending we were playing house instead of destroying one. Emma nodded but didn't move. Mummy cried during dinner. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Sarah never cried in front of Emma, never let our problems touch our daughter's world. If Emma had seen her mother break, things were worse than I'd realized. Sometimes grown-ups get sad about work stuff, I said, climbing the stairs to tuck her in. It's not fault, okay? I know, Emma said as I pulled her covers, but I think it might be yours. Kids see everything, they just don't have the vocabulary to call it what it is yet. By May I was living 2 completely different lives. Days belonged to Sarah and Emma, playing the role of devoted husband and father. Evenings belonged to Madison, where I could be the man I convinced I really was underneath all the responsibility and routine. The promotion money started disappearing. Dinners out, weekend trips to nearby cities, expensive gifts I told Madison deserved. Sarah noticed, of course. She noticed everything. The credit card statement came, she said one morning, sliding the envelope across the breakfast table. There's a charge for $300 at that jewelry store downtown. Did buy something for Mom's birthday. My mother's birthday wasn't until December. The necklace was sitting in Madison's jewelry box. Company expense. I lied, client appreciation gift. Sarah stared at me for a long moment. 12 years of marriage, and she could read me like a blueprint. But she wanted to believe me so badly that she nodded and went back to packing Emma's lunch. That's the thing about betrayal. It requires 2 people. One to lie and one to pretend they believe it. The breaking point came on Memorial Day weekend. Sarah had planned a family camping trip to the lake where we'd had our honeymoon. The same spot where I'd promised her we'd bring our kids someday, where we'd teach them to fish and tell them stories around the campfire. She'd been excited about it for weeks, buying new camping gear with money she'd scraped together from her part-time job at the hospital. Madison called Friday afternoon. There's this amazing bed and breakfast in the mountains, she said, her voice breathless with excitement. I got us a reservation for the weekend. Champagne, jacuzzi, the works. What do say? I looked at the camping supplies stacked by our front door. Emma's little fishing rod leaning against her tiny backpack. Sarah's hand-drawn itinerary posted on the refrigerator, complete with hiking trails and s'mores recipes. I can't this weekend. Family plans. Come on, David. When's the last time did something just for? We're always putting everyone else first. She made it sound noble, like choosing her over my family was some kind of self-care. Sarah will understand, Madison continued. Tell her something came at work, a client emergency. She knows how important career is. The worst part. It worked. Sarah did understand. She always understood when I had to choose work over family, because she believed I was sacrificing for our future. Emma will be so disappointed, Sarah said, but she was already mentally rearranging the weekend. Maybe we can do something local instead. The park, maybe a movie. I watched my wife redesign our daughter's weekend around my lies, and I felt nothing but relief that the guilt trip was shorter than expected. The mountain getaway was perfect. Madison and I hiked trails I should have been exploring with Emma. We shared bottles of that's more than Sarah's monthly grocery budget. We talked about dreams and plans and possibilities that didn't include the family I'd left behind. For 48 hours, I forgot I was a husband and father. I was just David again. Carefree, spontaneous desire. I came home Sunday night to Sarah and Emma building a blanket fort in the living room, having their own camping adventure indoors. They'd made trail mix and told ghost stories and even roasted marshmallows over candles. "We missed Daddy." Emma ran to hug me, sticky marshmallow fingers grabbing my shirt. "Look what me and Mommy built." The fort was incredible. Elaborate, creative, obviously the result of two people making the best of disappointment. While I was off playing house with another woman, my wife was making magic for our daughter. "How was the emergency?" Sarah asked, not looking from securing a blanket corner. "Handled it. Sorry I missed the weekend. We survived." Her voice was carefully neutral. Emma had fun anyway, but I caught her looking at me differently now. Less like a partner, more like a problem she was trying to solve. June brought new complications. Madison started talking about the future. Our future. "I've been thinking," she said one evening as we walked through downtown, holding hands like teenagers. "Maybe it's time considered what really want. Are happy in marriage?" The question I'd been avoiding for months, spoken out loud by the woman who represented everything I thought I was missing. "It's complicated," I said. "Who doesn't have to be? Or young deserve to be with someone who appreciates, who shares dreams, someone who makes excited to come home instead of looking for excuses to stay away." She painted leaving as liberation, like I was a prisoner instead of a man who'd made promises. "What about Emma? Kids are resilient. She'll adjust. And I'll still be her father. I'll probably be a better father when they're truly happy. That's how affairs work. They make destruction sound like construction. They make abandonment sound like growth." By the end of June I was spending more nights at Madison's apartment than in my own bed. I told Sarah I was working on a major project with tight deadlines, staying at a hotel near the office to save commute time. She stopped asking questions. Stopped trying to verify my stories. The woman who used to plan surprise date nights and leave love notes in my lunch was becoming a stranger who managed our household like a business partnership. Emma stopped running to the door when I came home. The first time she didn't get from her coloring book when I walked in. Something inside me shattered. Kids don't withhold affection unless they've learned it's not safe to give it freely. "Hi baby girl," I said, sitting on the floor beside her. "What are drawing? Or family?" she said without looking. The picture showed 3 people standing in front of a house. Sarah, tall and smiling. Emma in the middle, tiny and happy. And me off to the side, drawn significantly smaller than the others, with a frown on my face. "Why does Daddy look sad?" I asked. Emma finally looked at me with those wise 8-year-old eyes. "Because don't want to live with us anymore." The truth, spoken by someone too young to understand the devastation of it. "That's not true, sweetheart. Daddy loves living within Mommy." "Then why are always gone?" I didn't have an answer that wasn't another lie. That night Sarah confronted me. Not with anger, but with exhaustion. "David, I need to know what's really happening. Not the work story, not the client emergency story. The truth." We were standing in our bedroom, the one I'd painted pale blue because it was her favorite color. The bed we'd bought together when we were newlyweds, dreaming of lazy Sunday mornings and children jumping between us. I could have told her everything then. Could have confessed and begged forgiveness and tried to rebuild what I'd been systematically destroying. Could have chosen the woman who stood by me for 12 years over the one who'd known me for 12 weeks. Instead I doubled down. I don't know what want me to say. Work is demanding right now. Knew that when married me. I married a man who wanted to build it with me, not someone who treats our home like a hotel. I'm providing for this family. Everything I do is for us. The lies came so easily now, I almost believed them. Sarah stared at me for a long moment, then walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. "What are doing?" "I'm giving what obviously want," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Space to figure out whatever this is without hurting Emma any more than already have." "Sarah, are being dramatic. I'm not going anywhere." She laughed, but it was hollow, broken. "Left months ago, David. I've just been to acknowledge it." She packed methodically. Essentials for her and Emma. Clothes, toiletries, Emma's favorite books and toys. I stood there watching my wife prepare to leave the house I'd built for her, and all I could think about was whether this meant I could spend the whole weekend at Madison's without making excuses. "Where we'll go?" "My sister's, until I figure out what comes next." "This is temporary, right? Just until things calm down." Sarah stopped packing and looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not even disappointment. Pity. "Still don't get it, do?" "There is no going back from this. Whatever been doing, whoever been seeing, it's over between us. I won't put Emma through watching her parents pretend to love each other." The accusation hit like a physical even though she was right. "I'm not seeing anyone." "Stop." Her voice was sharp now. "Just stop. The late nights, the mysterious expenses, the way look right through us like we're not even here. I'm not David. And I'm done pretending think I am." Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant, watching her mother pack with confusion and fear in her eyes. "Are we go on a trip, Mommy?" "Yes, baby. We're gonna stay with Aunt Lisa for a while." "What about Daddy?" Sarah looked at me, giving me one last chance for our family. To choose them over the fantasy I'd been living. I said nothing. "Daddy has some things to figure out," Sarah told our daughter. "But he loves very much, and this isn't fault, okay?" Emma nodded, but I could see the questions in her eyes, the same questions that would follow her for years. Why wasn't I enough to make Daddy stay? What did I do wrong? They left on a Tuesday morning in July. I watched from the kitchen window as Sarah loaded their suitcases into her car, Emma clutching her elephant in the back seat, both of them crying. The house felt enormous and empty without them. Every room echoed with memories I'd been too busy betraying to appreciate. Emma's artwork on the refrigerator, Sarah's coffee mug in the sink, the family photos that now felt like evidence of something I called Madison. "They're gone," I said. "Oh, David, I'm so sorry. But maybe this is what needed to happen. Now can focus on what makes happy." That night, Madison came over to comfort me. We ordered takeout and ate it in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of my family. Emma's toys scattered under the coffee table. Sarah's medical textbook stacked on the bookshelf. This place has so much potential, Madison said, looking around critically. With some updates, it could be amazing. New paint, maybe knock down this wall to open the space. She was already redesigning the house I'd built for another woman. Already erasing the evidence of the I'd destroyed. For 3 weeks I played bachelor. Madison practically moved in, redecorating and rearranging like she owned the place. I told this was what freedom felt like. This was what I'd been missing. But late at night when Madison was asleep beside me in the bed I'd shared with Sarah, I'd hear phantom sounds. Emma's laughter echoing from her empty room, Sarah's voice calling my name from the kitchen. The house I'd built with my own hands was becoming a mausoleum for the family I'd chosen to destroy. Then Emma's school called. Mr. Johnson. This is Mrs. Peterson, Emma's teacher. I wanted to check in about Emma's recent behavior changes. She's been having trouble concentrating, and yesterday she had a meltdown during art class when we were making Father's Day cards. Father's Day, I'd completely forgotten. She's been staying with her aunt temporarily, I said. There's been some family stress. I see. Well, she's asking a lot of questions about why families change, why people leave. I thought she'd know she's struggling. After I hung I sat in my empty house and really looked at what I'd accomplished. I'd traded a daughter's unconditional love for stolen moments with a woman who was already talking about remodeling my. I'd traded a wife who'd stood by me for 12 years for someone who'd only stuck around when things were exciting and new. I'd traded a home for a house. A family for a fantasy. The worst part? I still wasn't ready to admit I'd made a mistake. Madison was planning a housewarming party for the newest. She'd invited coworkers, friends, people who thought we were a legitimate couple instead of a man who'd abandoned his family and a woman who'd helped him do it. It'll be fun, she said, scrolling through Pinterest for party ideas. A fresh start celebration. I looked around the living room where Emma used to build blanket forts, where Sarah used to curl with her medical books, where we used to have family movie nights and birthday parties and all the ordinary magic that makes a house a home. Now it looked like a magazine spread. Beautiful, perfect, and completely empty of everything that had ever mattered. But I was too deep in the lie to find my way back to the truth. The divorce papers arrived on my birthday. September 15th. The same date I'd proposed to Sarah 13 years ago, kneeling in the backyard of the apartment we could barely afford, promising her I'd build us something better someday. Madison found the envelope first, opening it before I could stop her like she had every right to read the legal documents ending my marriage. She's asking for full custody, Madison said, scanning the papers with clinical detachment. And half of everything, including this house. The one I'd spent 5 years building with my own hands. Every weekend pouring concrete, laying brick, installing windows while dreaming of what we'd have inside those walls. Now Sarah wanted to take it, divide it like any other asset. She can't do that, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew she could. She could as she would, and she had every legal and moral right to destroy me the same way I destroyed her. Will it? Madison said, already switching into battle mode. Get a good lawyer. Document her instability. Her instability. Come on, David. Taking a child away from her father. Moving out without warning. Any judge will see she's not thinking clearly. I stared at the woman who'd helped me betray my family, now suggesting we my wife's character to protect the we'd stolen from her. Sarah's not unstable. She's protecting Emma. From what? A father who's finally happy. That's when it hit me. Madison genuinely believed we were the good guys in this story. That Sarah was the obstacle to our happiness, not the victim of our selfishness. That Emma was just collateral damage in my journey to self-actualization. The first court hearing was scheduled for October 3rd. I hired the best family lawyer I could find, using money that should have gone to Emma's college fund. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was spending my daughter's future to try to win the right to it. Sarah showed looking tired but determined, flanked by her sister Lisa and a legal aid attorney who probably made in a year what I spent on Madison's jewelry. Seeing her across that courtroom, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. The quiet strength, the way she faced problems head on, the protective fierceness when it came to our daughter. Emma wasn't there, thank God. She was at school, blissfully unaware that her parents were in a room full of strangers deciding who got to love her and when. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every variation of family destruction imaginable. She listened to my lawyer argue for custody, for my right to maintain a relationship with my daughter, for the importance of keeping the family home intact. Then Sarah's lawyer spoke. Honor, we're not asking to keep Emma from her father. We're asking to protect her from further instability. In the past 6 months Mr. Johnson has missed numerous school events, birthday parties and family commitments. He's been absent from the family home most nights, often not returning until well past midnight. Emma has asked her mother repeatedly why Daddy doesn't want to live with them anymore. Each word was made worse by the fact that every single one was true. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, Mr. Johnson has been cohabitating with another woman in the family home, while still legally married, exposing Emma to a confusing and inappropriate situation during her visits. I wanted to object, to explain that it wasn't that simple, but my lawyer touched my arm and shook his head, because it was that simple. I'd brought my mistress into the house I'd built for my wife and daughter. I'd let Madison sleep in Sarah's bed, eat at Emma's breakfast table, redecorate the rooms where my family's memories lived. The judge granted Sarah temporary full custody with supervised visitation rights for me. Supervised, like I was a danger to my own daughter. Walking out of that courthouse, I caught Sarah's eye for just a moment. I expected anger, maybe satisfaction at her legal victory. Instead, I saw something that broke me completely. Sadness, like she was mourning the man I used to be. Madison was waiting in the parking lot ready to comfort me and plan our next legal strategy. But all I could think about was Emma sitting in her new bedroom at Aunt Lisa's house, wondering why Daddy couldn't just come pick her and take her home like he used to. The supervised visits were 2 hours every other weekend in a sterile room at the family court building. A social worker taking notes on every interaction between me and my daughter. Emma would bring drawings and stories from school, chattering about her friends and her new teacher, trying so hard to act normal while sitting in a room that screamed, "Family is broken. Why can't I come home, Daddy?" She asked during our third visit, the question I'd been dreading since the day Sarah left. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Mommy and Daddy are working through some grown problems. Is it because of the lady who lives at our house now? The social worker looked from her notes. Even Emma knew about Madison. Of course she did. Kids always know more than we think they do. What lady? I asked, though my heart was already sinking. The pretty one. Tommy's mom saw her when she drove by to drop off my science project. She told Tommy's dad there's a strange lady living in the Johnsons' house, and Tommy told me at recess. The neighborhood knew. Emma's classmates knew. My 8-year-old daughter was hearing gossip about her father's affair from third graders on the playground. Daddy did stop loving me and Mummy. The question every child of divorce asks, and the one no parent is ever prepared to answer honestly. I will always love Emma. Always, that will never change. But what about Mommy? I couldn't lie to her anymore. She'd heard enough to last a lifetime. Daddy made some very bad choices that Mommy's feelings. Sometimes grown-ups each have so badly that they can't live together anymore. Did mean to Mommy. Did I? In all my justification and rationalization, had I ever actually intended to destroy my wife? Or had I just been so focused on what I wanted that I'd convinced the collateral damage didn't matter? No, sweetheart. I never wanted to, Mommy. But I did anyway, and that makes it even worse. Emma nodded with the serious expression she got when processing something important. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I drew this for, she said. It was another family picture. But this time there were 4 people. Sarah and Emma standing together on one side, me and Madison on the other side, with a big black line drawn between the 2 groups. This is how our family looks now. Emma explained matter-of-factly. Separated. Looking at that drawing, I finally understood what I'd done. I hadn't just had an affair. I hadn't just made bad choices. I'd taken a happy family and split it in half, forcing my daughter to live in a world where love came with conditions and promises could be broken whenever someone got bored or distracted. The holidays were the worst. Emma spent Thanksgiving with Sarah's family, while I sat in my empty house with Madison, pretending to be grateful for my new Christmas morning. I woke alone because Madison had gone to visit her parents, and I wasn't welcome at Sarah's sister's house where Emma was opening presents under a tree I hadn't helped decorate. I called to Emma a Merry Christmas and heard laughter in the background. Sarah's voice, Lisa's husband, kids playing, the sound of home. I miss Daddy, Emma said into the phone. Are lonely. A little baby girl, me too, but Mommy says loneliness is just love with nowhere to go. Sarah's wisdom passed down to our daughter. Even in her pain, she was teaching Emma about emotion and healing instead of bitterness and blame. By January, the cracks in my relationship with Madison were showing. The excitement of sneaking around was gone, replaced by the reality of 2 people who barely knew each other trying to build something lasting. She hated that I couldn't stop talking about Emma. Got irritated when I had to leave for supervised visits. Started making comments about how I needed to move on and focus on our future instead of dwelling on my past mistakes, or never fully present. She complained during one of our increasingly frequent fights. Even when here, or thinking about them. She was right, I was thinking about them. About Emma's last soccer game that I'd missed. About Sarah working double shift to pay for a lawyer while I lived in the house she'd helped make a home. About that I'd thrown away for a woman who was already getting bored with the reality of who I actually was. Maybe this was a mistake. Madison said one February evening, standing in the kitchen where Sarah used to make Emma's lunches every morning. Maybe not as ready to move on as thought. What are saying? I'm saying I didn't sign to be second place to guilt complex. I thought wanted a fresh start, but are still stuck in old. The irony was suffocating. Madison was leaving me for the same reason I'd left Sarah. Because I'd stopped being the person she thought she wanted, and someone else's grass was looking greener. She moved out the next week, taking all the furniture she'd bought to replace Sarah's, leaving me in a house that felt like a museum of bad decisions. The final divorce hearing was in March. This time, Sarah came alone, no longer needing her sister's support to face me. She looked different, stronger, like she'd figured out how to be whole without me. The judge made it official. Sarah got full custody with my visitation rights extended to unsupervised weekends once a month. She got half of everything including the house. I got the debt, the lawyer fees, and the knowledge that I'd destroyed the best thing I'd ever had for something that lasted less than a year. Walking out of that courthouse for the final time, Sarah stopped me in the hallway. David, she said, and my name sounded foreign in her voice. I want to know that I don't, I'm angry, but I don't. Emma needs to be okay. Sarah, don't. Whatever going to say, don't. We're past apologies now. Just be a good father to her. That's all I need from. She walked away, and I understood that I was watching the final moment of our story together. 12 years reduced to a custody arrangement and a property settlement. The house went on the market in April. Sarah couldn't afford to buy out my half and I couldn't afford to buy out hers. The place I'd built with my own hands, brick by brick, dream by dream, would belong to strangers. The realtor was optimistic. It's a beautiful home, she said, walking through the rooms where my family used to live. Someone's gonna be very happy here. Someone's gonna be happy in the house where I destroyed everything. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment across town. Not because I needed 2 bedrooms, but because Emma would need somewhere to sleep during my monthly visits. Her room was small and sterile, nothing like the princess palace I'd painted pink when she turned 5, complete with glow and the dark stars on the ceiling. The first time she stayed overnight in my new place, she stood in the doorway of her bare room and asked, "Where are all my things?" "We'll get new things," I said. "We'll make this room special too," but we both knew it would never be the same. This wasn't her room. This was just a place she visited to spend time with her father, the way might visit someone in a hospital. My 35th birthday fell on a Wednesday. No party, no family dinner, no homemade cake with careful cursive writing. Emma was at school, Sarah was at work. Madison was probably out with someone new, someone who didn't come with baggage and guilt and supervised visitation schedules. I sat in my apartment eating takeout Chinese food, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of Emma's first steps in the living room of the house I'd lost. Sarah and me painting her nursery, both of us covered in pink paint, laughing like we had all the time in the world. Family vacations and birthday parties and ordinary Tuesday nights that I'd been too to recognize as perfect while I was living them. The knock on my door came around 8 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone, hadn't been expecting anyone for months. Emma stood in the hallway, holding a small gift bag and wearing the serious expression that meant she'd planned something important. "Happy birthday, Daddy," she said. Sarah stood behind her, car keys in hand, looking uncomfortable but determined. She insisted, Sarah explained, said she couldn't let birthday pass without seeing Pa. I knelt down to Emma's level, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of my daughter remembering my birthday when I'd forgotten so many of hers. "Didn't have to come, baby girl." "Yes, I did. You're still my daddy, even if we don't live in the same house anymore." The gift was a drawing. Another family picture, but this one was different. It showed me in my new apartment, Emma visiting for the weekend, both of us smiling. At the bottom she'd written, "New memories can be happy too." 8 years old, and she was already wiser than her father. Sarah didn't come inside, didn't try to make conversation or pretend we were anything other than two people managing the aftermath of my choices. But before they left, she said something that's haunted me ever since. She asks about every day, no. Wonders if we're lonely, if we're eating enough, if remember to take vitamins. That's what love looks like, David. It doesn't stop caring just because someone breaks heart. I watched him drive away, Emma waving from the backseat until they turned the corner and disappeared from view. That's when I finally understood what I'd lost. Not just a wife and a house and a comfortable. I'd lost the people who loved me unconditionally, who worried about my vitamins and remembered my birthday and forgave me long before I deserved it. I traded a family who saw the best in me for a woman who only wanted the excitement I could provide. I traded people who loved me for who I was for someone who loved me for who I pretended to be. And now I was alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, eating takeout on my birthday, surrounded by the silence that comes from burning bridges spent years building. The worst part isn't the loneliness, though that's crushing enough. The worst part is knowing that every single consequence I'm living with is a direct result of my own choices. No one forced me to cheat, no one made me leave, no one twisted my arm and made me choose temporary excitement over permanent love. I did this. All of it. I carried bricks under the burning sun to build a home for my family, believing it would unite us. But on my 35th birthday, I sat alone in a sterile apartment, realizing that the real foundation of any home isn't bricks and mortar, it's trust. And once demolished that foundation, no amount of construction skills in the world can rebuild what destroyed. The house I built with my hands was just a structure. The home I destroyed with my choices was everything that mattered, and it's gone forever.